Hey, welcome back to session 2 of Solving Why, Finding Your Purpose. Today, we are going to be talking about building our system and why our system matters. I'm in a tank top right now because one of my biggest things that I've started accomplishing in life is making sure that I stay physically in shape. I'm in better shape than I've been since I was in high school, actually even better since before then. And a lot of that has to do with the mental, physical, and spiritual well-being that I've implemented in my life. And I know so many times we want to get in good shape, right? We want to have the body. We want to have good mental health. We want to feel like we have some kind of spiritual connection. But how often are we asking, why do we want those things? Like, why is it important? Why is your mental health important? And how do you even deal with mental health? How do you deal with anxiety? How do you deal with stressors, right? Whenever it comes to your physical health, like, why should I work out? Why should I watch what I diet? Why should I get proper sleep? And then whenever it comes to our spiritual well-being, like, does it even matter if there's anything out there? And so this session today, we're going to be reviewing a little bit about session 1 whenever it comes to 8 questions. And then we're going to dive in whenever it comes to building our system and why integrating these things in our life matters more than just affirmation and acceptance. So if you went through the first session with us, we asked these 8 questions. The 8 questions are: who are you? What do you do? What is your purpose? What word describes what others think about you? What do you admire the most? What is your life goal? And why are you here in this meeting today? And then list 5 things that you're grateful for. I would encourage you, if you are going through this virtually, go back and revisit these questions. Go back and look at these and go, have any of these changed since the last class? Like, are any of my words starting to line up? What I would love for you to do is go back and reread these and see if maybe there's one word that you could tie to each one of these, and see if there's a word that starts coming to you as you go through this process, okay? And if you are joining us on School or one of the other online training platforms, with the other people that you're going through with, go see what their answers are. Get some feedback from them. See what's changing in their lives. That's how you actually start adopting these things. But today, we're going to talk a little bit about our mind, our body, and our spirit whenever it comes to connecting it to our why, our purpose. So your mind, body, and spirit. I know you've probably heard this more times than you care to admit. And so many times we just hear it and we just look past it, right? The Trinity, things come in 3. 3 is a perfect number, right? All these things come to us, but so many times we go through these and we just kind of skip over them. We get in that automation we talked about in the last class. And I think it's really important to intentionally break down each one of these things and look at why do they matter. Well, mental health. Our mind tells our body what to do. What happens if your mind is not functioning correctly because of holding on to things? We talked about the backpack theory in the last session, right? How do you start unpacking those things? We're going to talk about that today. Do we have chemical imbalances? Do I lack confidence? Are we strengthening the brain, which is connected to the mind? And what's the difference between the brain and the mind? Number 2, physical health. Our body is the container that carries us through this life. More so than just looking good, guys and girls, like, it is literally our physical container. It's what carries us through this life. I live and I train so that I can live to 100 and then fall off a cliff. Every day, just getting a little bit better. How do we treat it? What do we eat? How much do we exercise? Do we rest? And why does it even matter? Spiritual health. Is everything connected? If so, how exactly does spirituality affect our physical and mental health? How do we find purpose without something greater? It's really easy to fall into this trap of it just all being about you, like this singularity, right? And so we're going to dive in a little bit, just like this guy, like he's looking over and going like, why do these things matter? Well, let's dig into it. First, let's bring down looking at your mind, right? Why your mind? Well, your mind is your control center. A clean mind is so important. Clarity is so important whenever it comes to our daily function. Now, I want to differentiate 2 things because a lot of times these things sound interchangeably. The mind is part of our existence. It is a result of chemical reactions in our brain, which is physical, that allow us to make decisions. It is our conscious, our cognizant. It is our ghost center. the mind is associated with the brain. The two terms are also used interchangeably. The brain is considered to be a physical thing. The mind is considered to be mental. The brain is composed of nerve cells that can be touched, whereas the mind cannot be touched. So your brain is actually a part of the physical health, which we're going to get into a little bit. But your brain and how you take care of your body will directly correlate to those reactions that happen whenever it comes to your seat of consciousness, which is your mind. So in the last session, we were talking a little bit about the backpack theory, right? And we were talking about how whenever you get into life, you start going into something called automation. You stop thinking, you just kind of start going and going and going, not unpacking those things in our unconscious. Well, what happens if we continue to just compile in that backpack, right? We continue to avoid things. We continue to not deal with hardships in our life in a healthy manner. Well, why are you hiding from yourself? This is a very simple formulation that has been created to help you really understand what can happen whenever you hide things from yourself. So our conscious mind is over here, right? This is just me right now. I'm consciously moving my hands around. I'm consciously talking to the camera. I'm consciously stepping this way, right? Those are conscious decisions. I'm aware of the lighting in this room. Like I'm consciously doing that right now because I'm acknowledging it. What we do every day because it's what we know. It's our action center, right? Well, what can happen is if we have these layers in our backpack, right? And we have all these things happen. Have you ever run into a situation? Maybe you're out with a bunch of friends and maybe all of a sudden you run into someone from your past that knows something about you that you've never told anybody else. What can happen? Well, you try accessing the memory with that person, right? Your neuro pathway connected to that person, that situation, you try to go back and access that memory, right? Well, let's say with this person, there's some kind of unresolved trauma or unresolved hurt, or there's some unforgiveness that has transpired in your life that you have not dealt with. What can happen? Well, when you try to go accessing those memories, what you're doing is you're digging into your subconscious and unconscious mind. Now, this happens so fast based off of your neurotransmitters that a lot of times you don't even recognize it's happening. It just kicks in. Whenever you try to access it and you haven't resolved it, what happens? Boop, error symbol. Whenever that error symbol pops up because you're trying to access this memory, but there's a hurt associated with it you've never dealt with, what can happen? Well, you can get triggered, right? Have you ever heard the term trigger? What can happen whenever we get triggered? Well, we can go into avoid and distract. What could that look like? Well, maybe you distance yourself from the situation. Maybe you're in a relationship and all of a sudden the person you're dating does something that reminds you of an ex that hurt you, but you never dealt with the situation. What can happen? You avoid and distract. You withdraw. You say, this doesn't make me feel comfortable. I can't be vulnerable in this situation. The reason you can't be vulnerable is because there's something in your subconscious, there's something in your unconscious mind that you have not resolved. You know, that's what I was talking about in the last session. Whenever it comes to the backpack, the more that you allow those unresolved feelings to build up and build up, the further away you're going to get from being able to move forward. You know, we all want to have healthy relationships. We all want to have great physical bodies. We all want to be successful, depending on what your definition of success is. But so many times, the reason we're doing things or the reasons that we haven't done things is based off something that we have not resolved in our subconscious. It's locked in a safe. So whenever we run into these situations, what do we do? How do we deal with it? Because many times this avoid and distract, like you run away from a relationship that's safe, or you go turn to alcohol, or you habitually smoke marijuana, or maybe even like you go work out to exert yourself, but you're doing it to run away from the problem because you don't want to talk about it. Maybe you get angry and you shout. Maybe you go sit in your room and withdraw from everybody else because nobody understands what you're going through. When those moments come up, there are 4 tools that are scientifically proven that can help you work through what I would call a mental barrier, okay? So level 1, you get into that situation, you get uncomfortable, all of a sudden you feel triggered. What can you do to actually start working through that problem? Well, number 1 would be journaling. And whenever I'm talking about journaling, it's fine to type, but there was a study that was done in early 2023 in a university over in Europe where they actually took 70 students, divided it into two different control groups, and they hooked up 256 electrodes to measure their brain waves whenever it came to studying and whenever it came to putting information out there. Half of the group had to type out information, okay? The other half wrote down things either stylus to screen or pen to paper. And the remarkable thing is the group that wrote things out by hand, not just typed, they engaged 5 other areas in their brain that the control group that just typed did not. Emotionally, whenever you write, you're having to slow down. You're forcing yourself to process through. You're doing something called actualizing. You're taking this thought in your mind, right, which we talked about earlier, is a non-physical thing, and then you're taking a piece of paper or you're taking something in front of you and you're writing it down. You're actualizing it. You're saying, no, this really happened. Then you can go back and review that information and say, okay, how do I deal with this? So what are the benefits? Number one, self-awareness. Journaling helps whenever it comes to you becoming self-aware of your triggers. You become self-aware of your insecurities. Number two, creativity. It unlocks parts of your brain that are going to contribute to creativity whenever it comes to working through problems, right? And this can be applied in business. Maybe you keep on trying to do something over and over and over again in business, and it just is not working. Maybe you have a client that's super stubborn and for some reason you can't get past it. Go write it down. The other thing that it does, which is really remarkable, is improved memory. It actually taps into your limbic system where your hard drive is housed, your hypothalamus, in your brain, and it actually increases your memory. And this is scientifically proven over multiple studies. The other thing that it does is it actually lowers your stress, your cortisol in your body. So tool number one, whenever you're out there, you feel stressed out, go grab a journal, write something down, slow down to actualize it, and then come back and revisit it and see how you feel about it and how real it was for the situation. The second thing you can do is read. Now, you can do audiobooks, you can physically read, but there was a study done by the University of Sussex. And whenever they did this study, they took all the different activities that you can do to reduce stress, and they analyzed them to see which one lowers the stress hormone or cortisol the most. Reading reduces your stress by 68%. 68%. Now, that was physical reading. I personally listen to audiobooks, and I would suggest you, if you're reading audiobooks, go write down what you're learning from it to retain the information. And here's the other thing. Whenever you get triggered, go find a book about the trigger you're going through. Whether it's you're an entrepreneur and you feel like you're stuck, go journal about it. Then go find an entrepreneur or Google someone who is also going through that journey. This gives you an unbiased opinion so that you can refer back to it, and that person doesn't know who you are, but maybe they've gone through the same scenario. So it reduces stress. It helps you visualize. Whenever you're reading a book, you can start visualizing what you're going through based off of someone else's experience. It reduces stress, like I said, and it strengthens your brain. Your brain that is, again, connected to the mind. These two things alone, if you look at the majority of successful people, these are activities that they continuously do to go back and forth to allow yourselves to start processing through that backpack, unpacking those hurts, taking those bricks out, examining them and saying, does this serve a purpose in my life anymore, right? The third thing that you can do in this process, because so many times I know a lot of people who are introverts, they get stuck in these two, but level 3 is transparent conversations, okay? There is nothing that is more powerful than after you've started sorting through your backpack, sharing that with others and getting vulnerable. Brene Brown wrote Daring Greatly, and she talks about in that book, vulnerability being a superpower. I remember I was at a point in my life where I didn't know what I was going to do. I was so lost. And I applied these principles and actually Googled and found Daring Greatly by Brene Brown, which then led me to start sharing with other people what I was going through. This is how I started my podcast. I started talking to people and saying, hey, listen, I'm going through this. And then people started reaching out and saying, I'm not the only one. But this gave me validity. This started actualizing my problems. This started digging into my subconscious and unconscious mind so that I could start unpacking those things. What does transparent conversation do? Well, it creates oxytocin, cortisol, the stress hormone, SSRIs, which is one of the most prescribed medications, one of the most prescribed types of medications that we have right now in America. It regulates your serotonin levels, right? And so, whether you've been given, I don't know, Lexapro, right? Or a bunch of different like antidepressants, which are SSRIs. You can really help whenever it comes to that depression by going and creating oxytocin with other people by having transparent conversations. There's actually a book called Conversational Intelligence by Judith Gasser. And in that book, she actually goes in and researches the art and the science behind conversation and the power of it. Oxytocin is the feel-good hormone. That's how you bond with other people. You start realizing, well, I'm not the only person. In real life, not just from the book. The other thing it does is empathy. It increases your opportunity to empathize with other people and realize you're not the only one going through it. I'm not alone, right? After you start having these transparent conversations, after you start digging in, maybe you start realizing, wow, I really like this journey I'm on. The fourth step in breaking through these mental barriers is therapy, okay? Now, I'll tell you right now, I'm a big advocate of therapy, except there's one caveat whenever it comes to that. We've fallen into this society where you go to a therapist, your insurance pays, and every single time you show up, your therapist just goes, oh, you're doing great, you're doing great, you're doing great. You're just getting affirmed, affirmed, affirmed. You can get that from friends that, have bad habits, right? Go find a therapist that will tell you what you need to hear, not what you want to hear. And in my personal opinion, pay out of pocket. The reason you pay out of pocket is you're investing in your mind, which is your most valuable asset. Invest in your mind. Medications. Maybe you are in a position in life where maybe you do need an SSRI or a bridge, but you want to find a therapist that is going to help guide you to where they're not like, well, you're stuck here forever. Someone who's actually going to work for you and they actually are going to guide you through hardship. I got a buddy, his name's Benjamin Morrell here in Oklahoma City, and he actually does therapy to where he does cold therapy, cold plunge therapy, sauna therapy, like an immersive experience to help people really break through these barriers because he doesn't want to see you forever. He wants to see you healthy. That's the kind of therapist you need to look for. That's the kind of friends you need to look for when it comes to transparent conversations. People that will tell you what you need to hear, not what you want to hear. The other reason is it strengthens your brain. Going to therapy strengthens your brain. You're paying this person to basically mirror back to you what you need to hear. Because a lot of times, if we've gone through this process, we know what we're dealing with. This person just helps guide you if you go find a good one that'll actually help you do this. So whenever it comes to your mental health, again, the four things you can do is journal, you can read, you can have transparent and open conversations. And then if you feel like you need to go to the next step, go find a good therapist and pay out of pocket. And I promise it'll be one of the best investments you've ever made. So now that we've talked about the mind, we've talked about breaking through those mental barriers. Let's talk a little about the mind-body connection, okay? So the mind and the brain, right? Again, we've got non-physical, physical. Well, the mind is a non-physical thing and it cannot interact with a physical thing, okay? The brain is a physical thing that interacts with the mind. So the brain is a part of your body, okay? The mind is your conscious. It is your go. Again, it's your control center. So there's a famous quote, mens sana in corpore sano, okay? A healthy mind and a healthy body is a Latin phrase that remains relevant and is supported by today's data regarding nutrition and physical activity and their contribution to mental health. Indeed, several data have found an association between nutrition, physical fitness, and mental health, supporting the potential role of using nutrients and physical activity as agents for prevention, treatment, or augmentation of treatment for mental disorders in children, adolescents, and adults. It's the National Library of Medicine. So literally, how you take care of your body is going to affect how you take care of your mind. So maybe you've gone through, maybe you've started writing down, maybe you started journaling, you started sorting through those things. Well, the next step in that evolution is taking care of your body. There's 3 body whys. Number 1, your diet. What is your intake? And whenever I talk about diet, this is not just the food you eat. It's the information you intake. It's what are you watching on social media? Who are you hanging out with? What are they telling you? Your diet is a lot more than just what you eat. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that. Number 2, exercise. So this is your intake. This is your output, right? You breathe in, you breathe out. Everything is intake and output in your life, right? If you're in a relationship, it's a give and receive, right? You want to give to that other person, but there's not an expectation of receiving back, but that's what builds a good relationship, right? If you just give, and you don't have a well that you're supplying yourself from, which we'll get in spirituality, it's really hard for you to continue to give. So your exercise is your exertation, giving back, pushing yourself. And then the third one, which none of us like talking about, is sleep. If you look at it on average, if you get 7 hours of sleep, this is the most time-consuming activity that you will have in your life, is sleep. So taking care of your sleep matters. Well, let's look at our diet. Maybe you're like, well, I just want to diet so I can lose weight, right? Well, there's more reasons than that to diet. Why does what we eat matter? A balanced diet supplies the fuel your body needs to work effectively. Without balanced nutrition, your body is more prone to illness such as heart disease, diabetes, and cancer. Eating a variety of food and consuming less salt, sugars, and saturated fats are essential to ensure your body functions at its best. I know that whenever we talk about diet, so many times it's like, well, I just want a diet to look better. No. Dude, what you put in your body is literally going to affect how long you live. It's going to affect everything from a physical perspective. And today it's so hard with fast food, fast pace, right? Speed. It is so hard to actually concentrate on taking care of ourselves. And so if you didn't have a reason before to diet, diabetes, cancer, heart disease. The other thing that they don't talk about in here is if you had too many saturated fats, it's going to raise your blood pressure, which there's a lot of research coming out whenever it comes to Alzheimer's, dementia. High blood pressure contributes to the long-lasting effects on your mental, your cognitive storage in your brain. So taking care of yourself, dieting correctly matters because what you input into your life is going to affect what you can put out there. Whenever it comes to social media, if you're sitting there just watching content all the time that is giving you FOMO or fear of missing out, you're setting yourself up to be stressed out. You're setting yourself up not to feel good enough. If you have friends that are constantly speaking negative in your life, they're constantly telling you that you can't do what you want to accomplish. They're constantly telling you that, well, it's okay to just keep on drinking. It's okay to just stay where you're at. You're dieting with those people. I quit alcohol back in, it's been almost a year now. I didn't do it because I was a raging alcoholic. I did it because whenever I got ready for a podcast, I went and did a lot of research on it, and I couldn't find one scientific benefit that I couldn't find somewhere else. It's literally a poison. It's a neurotoxin. Whenever it comes to weed, right? I have no problem with people drinking or smoking weed, but you got to recognize the fact that the weed that we're smoking today has a lot of chemicals in it. It's a lot more potent than what we used to. And so how much you partake of that is going to affect what you're going to be able to output. The question you got to ask yourself is, do I want to maximize my life? Do I actually want to achieve my maximum potential? Do I want to live as long as I can? And if those are things that you want to do, watching your diet matters. This is why your diet matters. It adds to your longevity. Because unless you get your diet right, whenever it comes to exercise, you're not going to be able to output correctly. A lot of people cheat the system, right? A lot of people go take steroids, or they'll go take the skinny shot that's out now. And it's not my place to say whether or not to do those things, but there is a way for you to do this the right way so that it prepares you for your output. Well, why should we exercise? It prevents heart attacks. You strengthen your heart, diabetes, cancer. And to top things off, moving the body seems to help the brain, right? The brain that is connected to your go center, to your conscious mind. A healthy mind and a healthy body. Exercise matters. You got to push yourself. Skeletal muscle is the single most important thing. And skeletal muscle is built by slow, progressive movements. It's not, going to the gym for 3 days and then saying, all right, well, I'm good. No, it's slow, progressive movements. The reason I'm in a tank top is because I went and worked out right before this. You know what? I struggle with sticking to a regular workout routine like every single day, but I prioritize it. If I've got a chance at lunch or if I'm going to meet a client, I try to prioritize those meetings around fitness because I understand how much it matters. Studies have found that exercise to reduce the symptoms of depression, and it changes the brain in ways that are similar to an antidepressant medication. That SSRI we were talking about earlier, working out can actually help you become less depressed. In old age, physical activity may delay the slide of cognitive decline into dementia, and even once that process is started, exercise can improve certain aspects of thinking. That's by Health Harvard. So exercise can actually help. So let's say like you're on a path of being unhealthy. You're on a path where you're like, well, there's no return, or the doctors have told you there's nothing else you can do. Go diet. Go seek knowledge. Go look for solutions. Don't allow these mental barriers or what people are telling you to hold you back. Like, God created us very uniquely and wonderfully, and He has a plan for your life. But a lot of it is going to require action from you. So that's why exercise matters. It's not just about looking buff. It's not just about looking good in a bikini. It's not just good. It's not about those. Those are byproducts, right? So many times, we're supposed to enjoy the fruits of our labor, but we can't get stuck just laboring for the fruits all the time. You got to do it for what's in here. You got to do it for your why. You got to do it for your long-term purpose. Because if you just do it to look good, you're only going to look so good. I promise you. It's temporary. Do it because it'll allow you to live out your purpose, and it'll allow you to make an impact on the kingdom for many more years than if you just mistreat your body. So exercise is so important. Well, the last one is, why should we care about our sleep, right? So you've got intake, output, rest. You have to allow your body to recover. Same thing as like working out. You shouldn't work out the same muscle back to back to back to back days. You have to allow your body to recover. So why should we care about our sleep? It affects our heart and circulatory system, hormones, respiratory and immune system, metabolism, thinking, and memory. It affects everything. Sleep plays a vital role in good health and well-being throughout your life. The way you feel while you are awake depends in part on what happens while you are sleeping. During sleep, your body is working to support healthy brain function and maintain your physical health. That's the National Heart, Lung, and Blood Institute. The other thing that I want to go back to whenever it comes to your mental health, dude, if you're not taking care of your mental health, you're not going to sleep well. If you're not taking care of your anxiety, you're not going to sleep well. If you're not dieting correctly and exercising, you're not going to sleep well. Everything has to be balanced. This is why your body matters. And it's easy to fall into the trap of like, well, I'll sleep when I die, or I'll do this when I die. No, take care of yourself. If you wanted to do something really interesting, start a dream journal. You would be shocked whenever you start that journal how many insecurities come to the surface. And also how many things you can kind of predict in your life that are going to happen if you keep on the path you're going. It's like a warning system. It's your unconscious mind talking to your subconscious, which your conscious is still slightly aware of if you bring it into it by journaling it out. Super fascinating. So again, your mental health is important. Break through those mental barriers. Your body is important. Your physical health is important. Make sure you're dieting correctly. Make sure you're exercising. Make sure that you're sleeping and allowing your body to rest. Because all of this ties into a bigger picture, okay? So we're going to tie this all together. Why are you doing it? Why are you here? Have you ever asked that question? Like, why am I here? Like, what is my purpose? Like, who created me? I'm going to tell you guys right now. So I am a strong believer in God. I'm a Christian. I'm a born again Christian. I will stand by that. But if you're watching this and you're an atheist, or you are a Buddhist, or you are a whatever you believe, or you don't believe in anything, okay? you have to believe that there is something greater whenever it comes to just your sphere of influence. And whatever you want to pick it, but you need to pick a higher power. If you want it to be yourself, then pick yourself as the higher power. If you want to pick it as Muhammad, then pick Muhammad. But you have to pick something as your higher power. In my humble opinion, it's God. It's the God of the universe that created us all. Well, why does it matter, right? Well, your spirit is wisdom. It's constant. It's your filter, right? Our spirit is the center of our world. It is the filter of our existence. It is the thing that cannot actually interact with our physical or anyone else. It is spiritual. It is non-physical. It's not connected to your conscious. It is literally just your being. It is me, right? It is where it's where my core values exist. It's whenever I decide to make a decision or decide not to make a decision, it's what filters it all. The other thing is that spirituality, ironically enough, kind of connects everything, because you've got your physical action, your mental knowledge, your experience in your community, things around you, and these things all are reacting, but they're constantly being filtered by your spirit. The more you get alone, the more you concentrate, the more you meditate, the more that this will become better. This is like that sixth sense, right? It's that you run into someone and you're like, oh, wow, I haven't seen you in forever. The more you can tap into that, the more you get outside of yourself, because so many times we want to play it safe, right? We want to stay in our little box. We want to stay in our own personal little community. We want to stay small. What if the world was bigger? What if there was more out there? What if, like, you randomly running into that person that offered you the job wasn't a coincidence? What if it was a part of a bigger plan? The more that you think that, the more that you are going to tap into the modern day thing would be collective consciousness or God. This takes a lot of intentionality. This takes a lot of meditation. This takes a lot of sitting with yourself, no thoughts, no anything, and just allowing yourself to be. Guys, I could tell you about miracle after miracle that have happened in my life the more that I tap into this. It happens to me every single day. I can't tell you how many times that I look for God. I look for something larger. I look for a larger purpose, that all of a sudden I just get introduced to something that is completely outside of my realm of possibility. And if you've never experienced this, you're more than welcome to reach out to me. I'd love to share with you my experiences. But thinking that this is your entire existence, what's around you right now, in my humble opinion, is very limiting. Because what happens is the more that you think outside of yourself, the more that your mental health matters, the more your physical health matters, the more your spiritual health matters, because you realize there's all these other spirits out there. There's all these other people that are also living this. But the only way to connect with them is to get outside of yourself and truly connect to make a bigger difference. I don't believe in coincidence anymore. I don't. I don't believe in deja vu. After journaling my dreams, I don't believe it anymore. I believe that we are tapped into something that is greater than ourselves, that is this spiritual connection that is connected to God. But it takes so much intentionality, and it takes so much slowing down in order to actually tap into it. And so whenever you're on your journey of finding your why, I think this right here is so important, because it is the thing that connects us to everyone else in ways that cannot be explained. It just is. I mean, is anything ever random? Is it really? Or the more that we connect with our higher power, the more that we look outside of ourselves, the more that we, are working on physical health and all this for ourselves, but we realize that we can make a larger impact on the world around us, the more that you can truly lean into your purpose, because it becomes a little bit less about you and a little bit less about me and more about we. And that's whenever you can start dreaming big and get out of those limitations. So, session 1 through 4. Number 1 was the basics, right? Talked about the series of process development. Building our system, right? Understanding mental health, understand how to break through it, physical health. Why does it matter? Why does going to the gym matter? Why should I make that a priority? Why does my diet matter? Why does my sleep matter? Week 3, disciplines. We're going to talk about habit stacking and synaptic pruning, which is the science behind it. We're going to talk about TVI, a time value index, how to measure your time and calculate where your time is going. SMART goals, right? Like not just saying, so many times it's easy to fall in and saying, well, I just want to get a little bit better at something, but not actually setting SMART goals to where we can actually achieve them. So we're going to go over that. We're talking about starting your morning off. How starting your morning will set the pace for your entire day. And then finally, on week 4, which is the last one, we're going to go and we're going to talk about our why. We're going to really dig in and really start looking at what is my why. Here's some resources. Number 1, Matthew McConaughey, Green Lights, great book. Matthew McConaughey, regardless, love him, hate him, it's a really good book. He talks about green lights, red lights in life and when to look for those intentional observations, those interactions with something bigger than you, when to say yes, when to say no. Young Pueblo, Lighter. If you want a spiritual read, it's a little bit more new agey. It's really, really good. Besser van der Kolk, The Body Keeps the Score. It's a hard read, guys. If you want to understand mental health, if you want to understand, maybe you went through trauma as a child, maybe you have someone in your life that went through trauma and you don't understand, dude, that body will blow your socks. I mean, that book will blow your socks off. It's a really tough read, but it is well worth it. If you listen to an audiobook, it's like 16 or 17 hours. But it really shifted my perspective on the neuroscience and the science behind the medicated society we live in and alternative methods to actually start preventing instead of just treating. Podcast, The Huberman Lab. Really, really good. There's, some people have some problems with him. They're not like a big fan. I'm a big fan of him. I like his guests especially. And so I think that if you go check him out, really interesting topics on neuroscience. He has a lot of really interesting guests and it's something that I think is really awesome. So big takeaways on this, right, is the fact that you got to take care of your mental health. You got to take care of your spiritual health. You got to take care of your physical health. Got to take care of those 3 things because we have limited time, guys. If you didn't get anything else from this training, I hope that you realize that you can keep on putting this stuff off until tomorrow. You can keep on telling yourself, well, I'll forgive that person. Or you can keep on telling yourself, well, tomorrow I'll get in the gym. Or you can keep on telling yourself, well, I'm going to go have this hard conversation in my relationship one day. Or, well, I'm going to go start my business, at some point. It's never going to come. You get the unique opportunity of free will in your life. And you get to do whatever you want with it. But the reality is that tomorrow is not guaranteed. So I encourage you, if you've watched this, if it's touched you, take action. Whenever you get triggered, start journaling. Whenever you feel stressed out, go talk to the person that will tell you what you need to hear, not what you want to hear. If you don't have any kind of spiritual connection, but you feel that gut yearning for something bigger, go talk to God. Because I promise you, based off of my experience, He's listening. And I want to thank you, based off of your life in weeks. Everybody gets roughly 1 million, I guess like 1,500,000 hours. So if you've hung out with me for this hour, I want to thank you for honoring me with this hour. I hope that it inspires you to go make a bigger impact. But it all starts with you, and it can all change today. Thanks for tuning in. I'll see you on session 3.